Tonight, a catastrophic start to the year in Australia. Trapped by flames on roads and on the beach, thousands flee the deadly brush fires. Protesters attack the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. First a storm, now a strike leaves some passengers in Montreal grounded. From uprisings in the streets to victory on the courts.
Complete exoneration.
We look back on the top stories of 2019. This is The National. This is the terrifying view from inside an Australian inferno. Firefighters in New South Wales had to take shelter in their own truck as flames engulfed the vehicle. The crew did manage to escape once the fire had passed. But it's a grim reminder that 3 firefighters have lost their lives in New South Wales in the past 2 weeks. Today, the overall death toll rose to 12, and the government announced new measures to fight back. Military aircraft and ships are being deployed to give humanitarian assistance and carry out evacuations. Canada and the U.S. have been asked to contribute aviation resources. With so many fires burning along the eastern part of the country, Australia needs all the help it can get. Tanya Fletcher begins in this hardest hit area in New South Wales, not far from Sydney.
This is the first day of 2020 in Australia. Normally blue skies turned blood red.
So this is really scary now. It's just red everywhere.
This video taken in the middle of the day, though it looks like the middle of the night. Tourist hotspots have turned into ghost towns all along the south coast. Families on summer holiday forced to take refuge in boats and vehicles.
The fire is along the beach now, and we can't get out of Bateman's Bay because all the highways are blocked.
Now, though, a moment of relief at Malakuta, where yesterday thousands were forced to take shelter on the beach. Today, the wind changed direction and the flames bypassed the area. The wind is a critical factor. It's now blowing the smoke all the way to New Zealand, and it's not about to stop.
We are expecting breezy conditions, albeit lower temperatures, and there is real potential for these fires to continue to flare up and spread.
Further north, this is one of the hardest hit areas of New South Wales.
The wind just picked up and embers just took off, and that was it. Everything then just went woof.
And amidst the sound of crackling flames, voices on the front lines suggest despair.
It was always going to come one day, and the conditions now are dry everywhere, We've got no chance, no water, nothing, so.
A father and son are among the 3 latest casualties. They, like many, had stayed behind to try to protect their property. The aerial images now show devastating destruction. At least 1,000 homes destroyed, buildings collapsed, and cars charred to a crisp. It's all in stark contrast to the New Year celebrations in Sydney. The iconic fireworks continued despite opposition, but the road ahead looks rough as New Year begins. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
3 hours after Sydney's spectacle, Hong Kong rang in the new year. The official version looked like this. The Hong Kong Tourism Board released this wide shot of the harbour, complete with a music track. Here's what you might have heard, though, on the ground.
Fight for freedom!
Before midnight, protesters marched and chanted and cheered. Police used tear gas to disperse demonstrators, but the large crowds marched in defiance. 2020 is getting off to a tumultuous start in Baghdad. Protesters attacked the U.S. Embassy after airstrikes on the Iranian-backed militia. And as Paul Hunter reports, Donald Trump is accusing Tehran of whipping demonstrators into a frenzy.
Mayhem in and around the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. It's one of the most fortified and well-guarded compounds in the Iraqi capital. But today, demonstrators unleashed their fury on it, and while none made it into the main building, they left their mark. Today, we have revenged, said this man. We entered the embassy and set it on fire. U.S. guards watched on from rooftops and responded with stun grenades and tear gas. There were no reports of any Americans hurt, nor of any plans to evacuate. The rage is over this: U.S. airstrikes in Syria and Iraq on Sunday that killed 25 and wounded more than 50 members of a militia group backed by Iran. Says the U.S., it was a response to a rocket attack it blames on the fighters that killed an American contractor on an Iraqi military base. In blaming Iran for all of it, Donald Trump today tweeted, "Iran will be held fully responsible for lives lost or damage incurred at any of our facilities. They will pay a very big price. This is not a warning, it is a threat. Happy New Year." U.S. Marines in neighboring Kuwait, meanwhile, are now readying for deployment into Iraq. All of it putting stress on U.S.-Iraq relations and threatening once again U.S. influence in the region broadly. Some U.S. lawmakers are already pressing for more economic sanctions against Iran. For its part, Iran denies any involvement in the protests. Tonight, U.S. Apache helicopters sent flares into the sky as all sides wondered where this goes from here. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Here in Canada, more headaches for air travelers in and out of Montreal. Just a day after weather delayed or canceled dozens of flights, some key airport workers have gone on strike. Sarah Levitt has the latest.
Outside Montreal Trudeau Airport, the workers meant to be refueling the planes are on strike. Inside the airport, worried travelers.
They shouldn't have picked New Year's Eve to go on strike.
Caroline Christie was in Florida for the holidays, but delays in Montreal meant her stopover flight landed late and her flight home to St. John delayed, all because of a blast of winter weather.
Our plans for New Year's they're pretty well messed up right now because we're not going home to St. John. So, but you can't. What can you do?
The heavy snow started falling in southern Quebec yesterday. That's caused delays and cancellations. Now about 100 employees working for aviation company Swissport have walked off the job. On average, they refuel about 500 planes at Trudeau and Mirabel airports every day. The workers have been without a contract since March. The company's latest offer rejected.
We're trying not to disturb the passengers whatsoever, but the airlines had no choice. They knew this was going to come. They could have averted this, but they didn't.
In a statement, Swissport says it prepared a contingency plan. We have the properly trained resources in place to continue refueling activities. We are working with airport authorities to minimize any disruptions to travelers.
It's very bad for us.
Marie-Therese, Fami, and her husband are trying to head home to Toronto after being in Cancun. Their 1-hour stopover last night has turned into 24 hours at the airport. Their rescheduled flight today also in jeopardy.
Oh my goodness, I don't know. I hope nothing else happens. I want to spend New Year with my kids. They are home in Toronto, my family, so it's sad.
A feeling shared by many just wanting to be home with family and friends for the new year. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
And Montreal's not the only area hit with bad weather this New Year's Eve. Much of Atlantic Canada blanketed by weather advisories, most of them for snowfall with some winds. And in Vancouver, it's rainfall warnings in effect. So bad it's washed out some of tonight's fireworks shows. Further inland, thousands of people lost power after a heavy snowfall. Thousands of Canadians who have been waiting to bring their parents or grandparents to this country will have to wait even longer. The Liberal government is postponing the next round of its family reunification program. Ashley Burke met with one family who fears the delay could tear them apart.
Okay, I'll take this one then.
4 generations of Jillian Troy's family are getting ready to ring in the new year, but it's hard to celebrate.
I just feel totally and utterly helpless, and I want to be able to help my mother. Come on, let's have a snuggle.
Her 87-year-old mother has been here as a visitor since 2018. They've been trying to make the move permanent, but are stuck in limbo until the government fixes and reopens the parental application process.
It's extremely frustrating, and it's something that is in the back of your mind all the time. I'm a bit afraid. I'm afraid of having to go back by myself.
Beryl Hughes doesn't have any family left in the UK. Her husband died suddenly 2 years ago.
What are they building here?
That same year, Troy's husband also passed away.
Where's Matilda?
The two now rely on each other, and Hughes helps raise her great-grandchildren.
They've become my life because that's the only time I come alive, isn't it?
Yes.
The government has tried again and again to improve the system, which allows parents and grandparents to come to Canada. It tried a lottery system, but was criticized for gambling with people's lives. Last year, it moved online, but the system was overwhelmed.
The problem with the system is that they have too little spaces and too much interest.
Last year, Canada accepted about 20,000 parents and grandparents. The demand was 5 times higher.
Having a delay and not knowing what the program's going to look like makes it even harder for them to wait.
Hughes is worried that if she's forced to go back to England, she'll miss watching her great-grandchildren grow up.
I mean, when you see a little 2-year-old screaming, running with her arms open, and she grabs you around your knees and tries to climb up you, that's love, and that's what you want. And that's what I've got here. I haven't got anywhere else.
She's unlikely to get an answer about her future before April. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
The federal carbon tax goes into effect tomorrow, and the Alberta government is vowing to fight it.
Albertans voted overwhelmingly in the provincial election to repeal the carbon tax, as well as in the federal election to repeal the carbon tax. We've heard them loud and clear. We're doing everything within our power to make sure we take that step to get that done.
The province is locked in a court battle right now, arguing the tax constitutes federal overreach. Ottawa, though, insists climate change is a national emergency that demands immediate action. Meantime, the price of gas in Alberta is going up. Aaron Collins explains how we got here.
It's a sign of the times. Low gas prices soon to be on the rise at this Calgary gas station. An unwelcome holiday gift for many Albertans.
You know, the economy is slowed down for the last 4 or 5 years, and the business is not doing great. And on top of they introduced that tax that will more cost for us.
Of course, Alberta has long had a price on carbon. The province began taxing industrial emitters in 2007. Rachel Notley's NDP government introduced a price for everyone else a decade later. But Jason Kenney and his UCP rode to power on a promise to scrap that tax. The UCP maintained a price on carbon for industrial emitters. Now the tax on consumers is set to return too. The federal carbon levy will start at $20 per ton, ramping up to $30 in April.
Gasoline, natural gas for home heating, for example, those will become more expensive on January 1st.
That means prices at the pump will rise by about a nickel per liter. Still, economists say most Albertans will actually come out ahead.
Because of the size of the rebate, the majority of families will see carbon tax costs that are less than the rebate that they get.
But with most of the cash being rebated, there's little left over to fund green programs like subsidies for solar panels or efficient windows. Grants that existed under the provincial program helping to reduce emissions and boost investment in sustainable energy.
You have some very strong models here that you should replicate at some point, and that you could replicate at the federal level, absolutely.
But in Alberta, carbon taxes remain a lightning rod. For many here, there's a belief the federal government doesn't support the struggling oil and gas industry.
I'm Albertan at the moment, so I'd like to support this, our industry. An industry that supports the rest of the country.
Of course, Alberta's fight against the federal carbon tax isn't over. The province is still challenging it in court. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
Ontario tenants are bracing for a possible rent hike in 2020. The province is letting landlords increase rents by 2.2%. As Ellen Morrow shows us, some Toronto tenants are worried.
Like that?
Shoe Star and her daughter Cherry do their best to have fun, even as financial stress stalks them every day.
We're left on about, maybe $80 a week to live on for the two of us, which has got to cover diapers, it's got to cover food.
And soon it may have to stretch even further. In 2020, Ontario landlords can up rents 2.2%, the highest amount since 2013. It might not sound like a lot, but on an already tight fixed income,
it would definitely be a challenge for me. I can imagine that people would be priced out of where they're living.
It's a rough crisis.
This tenant advocate says allowing landlords to automatically increase rent isn't fair.
They are able to increase their rent, whether they need the money or not.
We're getting into the kitchen here.
But landlords argue that 2.2% doesn't even cover their costs.
My insurance here has gone up 10% from last year to this year. The increase in municipal water charges and garbage, that has gone up, as well as taxes. You can't keep digging into your own pocket to cover those costs.
The increase is calculated using Ontario's inflation rate. Already, data shows that 5 of the top 10 most expensive Canadian cities when it comes to rent are in the province, with Toronto topping the list. The provincial government has already promised $1 billion to fix the affordable housing crisis.
The number one thing we can do as a government is create a balanced system, and we're going to be very mindful of the things that we've heard from both tenants and landlords.
Star doesn't know yet if her rent will go up, but a 2.2% rise for her would be about $30 a month.
I can spend $30 for groceries. I don't have that $30 anymore, so where's that money going to come from?
A difficult question as the new year looms. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
And we're back in 2 minutes with more news, including a VIA train derailment in southern Manitoba. And remember that much mocked Peloton ad? Well, it's not the only marketing misstep from 2019. That's next. Welcome back. Here's some of the stories we're following tonight. Cleanup is underway in southern Manitoba after a Via Rail passenger train went off the rails early this morning.
So it was scary. It was very scary. And all of a sudden there seemed to be brakes and then stopped, and then all the power went off, and then the emergency lights came on, and everybody's sitting around looking around saying, what just happened? 7
passengers and 5 crew members were on board at the time. No one was seriously hurt. Via hasn't said exactly what happened. The Transportation Safety Board is investigating. An unusual moment in Vatican City today. That is Pope Francis pulling himself free after a woman grabbed his hand and yanked the Pope towards her. Pope Francis was greeting crowds in St. Peter's Square. And the former head of Nissan made a dramatic escape from Japan, where he was awaiting trial on financial misconduct charges. Carlos Ghosn says he's now in Lebanon and that he skipped bail to avoid what he calls a rigged Japanese justice system. This is the season of top 10 lists, the year's best songs, movies, and so forth. Now get ready for the worst. Peter Armstrong looked at the world of marketing where getting it wrong can cost a fortune.
First ride, I'm a little nervous, but excited.
In a year of blunders, the Peloton bike ad claims top spot. The ad portrayed a woman who, seemingly reluctantly, received a stationary bike for Christmas.
Peloton's bottom line took a major hit.
The company is peddling negative body image and sexism.
It was even fodder for comedians who relentlessly mocked the ad.
6 days in a row. Are you surprised? I am, but my marriage is still intact.
Peloton bikes sell for $2,500 a pop. The company said, our holiday spot was created to celebrate that fitness and wellness journey. Well, we're disappointed in how some have misinterpreted this commercial. But the damage was already done. The stock plummeted after the ad was released. Peloton lost an astounding $1.2 billion in value in a single day of trading. Elon Musk and Tesla branched out this year, adding to their line of electric vehicles.
So I present to you the Cybertruck.
The Cybertruck was marketed as something bigger and stronger and tougher than its competitors. So much so that Musk had someone throw a steel ball at the windows to show they cannot break.
Sure? Yeah.
The question is largely around how these gaffes impact the way people think about a company. Business professor Marvin Ryder says you spend years building up trust in a brand or a company.
Then one day you learn something about them that seems so out of character, it's lost in a heartbeat. It could take nearly 20 years to get it back, and that's if you don't make any more errors.
Tesla and Peloton, of course, are not alone. Facebook announced a digital currency. A company famous for exploiting and selling your data now wants you to trust it with your money. Tim Hortons came under fire for re-engineering the lids of their coffee cups, therein wrecking a morning double-double for an already frustrated nation. Kim Kardashian took on the Spanx brand of shapewear, calling her new line Kimono, prompting charges of cultural appropriation.
You surprised?
But one company's gaffe is another's opportunity. Just as the Peloton ad was going viral, Aviation Gin was scrambling to take advantage.
To new beginnings.
To new beginnings.
Within 2 days, they had found and hired the Peloton actress, wrote and shot a spoof of the ad, and piggybacked all that outrage to piles of free publicity. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead on The National, the stories that captivated us this year, here at home and across the world. And one of the biggest newsmakers of 2019 was also one of the smallest. Harry and Meghan shared this picture today of the prince and their son Archie. Families spending the holidays on Vancouver Island. Auckland was one of the first cities to celebrate the new year. Thousands gathered to see fireworks from the 328-meter tall Sky Tower.
Happy New Year!
Taipei followed a few hours later, setting off 16,000 fireworks from its tallest skyscraper. And in London, Big Ben rang in the air for the first time in a while. The landmark has been under restoration for almost 3 years. So with a bang, 2020 begins. The year that passed had its own rhythm. 2019 was a year of change. Unexpected triumph on the court, upheaval in the streets, and under threat of disaster, calls for revolution. Tonight, a chance to look back. We rewind those newsworthy moments of 2019, beat by beat.
Oh my God!
We have seen what we thought was unseeable.
Wow, this is my culture, my country making progress.
It doesn't matter that we're all women. We're just pilots and nurses and paramedics, and we're here to do our job.
Like the man on the moon.
I experienced a consistent and sustained effort by many people within the government to seek to politically interfere in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion.
I am surprised and disappointed, and to be honest, don't entirely understand why Jody Wilson-Raybould made the decision she did.
Jane Philpott's resignation from cabinet clearly demonstrates a government in total chaos.
In every election, we get to make an important choice about the future of our country. We get to decide what kind of future we want to build together.
Who can you trust to help you and your family to get ahead?
We are going to bring a hopeful message to Canadians. Who's on your side? Who's going to fight for you?
File and vote green. It feels good. We must not build the Trans Mountain Pipeline.
Breaking news tonight, a dramatic night in Canadian politics, a photo of him wearing brown face.
It was a dumb thing to do. I'm disappointed in myself. I'm pissed off at myself.
Yes or no, same-sex marriage is just as morally equivalent as traditional.
I believe in the equality rights of all Canadians. Always been open and consistent. I am personally pro-life.
You should cut your turban off and you look like a Canadian.
Oh, I think Canadians look like all sorts of people. That's the beauty of Canada.
I have heard you, my friends. You are sending our Liberal team back to work.
We'll keep holding Justin Trudeau to account.
The President has repeatedly claimed that your report found there was no obstruction and that it completely and totally exonerated him.
It was a complete and total exoneration.
But that is not what your report said, is it?
Correct. It is not what the report said.
What exactly is an impeachable offense? Witness after witness told their versions of the same story, that Trump tried to pressure Ukrainian President Zelensky into digging up dirt on Joe Biden.
Which is a hoax to start off with.
Article 1 is adopted.
Paul Manafort has been sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison. Donald Trump's former lawyer started his 3-year jail sentence for financial crimes.
WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks.
He was convicted on 7 counts. He now joins a long list of Trump aides who've faced legal consequences.
It was the biggest protest Hong Kong has seen in decades.
The proposed law would give officials in Beijing the power to bring those wanted in Hong Kong to mainland China.
This is about human rights.
At least you fight for it. On the streets, the anxiety grows.
The images from inside the university apocalyptic.
Global grief and so many questions about what brought down Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. 157 people, all lost, 18 of them from Canada.
They must have called their mommy. They must have cried out their daddy.
Around the world, airlines grounded their MAX 8 fleets.
I look at Boeing as a company that focused on profits instead of the safety of human life.
A year ago, police labeled Bruce MacArthur a serial killer. Today, they were in the courtroom to hear him admit it.
8 pleas of first-degree murder.
The judge ordered MacArthur serve his sentences concurrently. If he's still alive, MacArthur will be 91 when he can apply for parole in 25 years.
Fear and anger, loss, deep, deep sadness.
It's the worst ever love story.
Their bodies were found along the Alaska Highway.
4 days later, another body was found.
This is a fast-moving investigation.
The RCMP are now considering Cam McLeod and Briar Schmigelski as suspects.
The teenagers, 2 of the most wanted men in the country.
As a full-on manhunt continues in the province.
I'm just hoping and praying that they get caught soon because this is crazy.
Today, results.
RCMP officers located 2 male bodies. We believe these are the bodies of the 2 suspects.
She says she escaped her abusive family after renouncing Islam, and that if she were to be sent home, she would be killed.
I'm not leaving my room. I want asylum.
Canada was glad that we were able to act quickly and to offer refuge to a person whose life was in danger.
You people love you that come here, whatever it is, you love our way of life, you love our milk and honey.
The fact that Don Cherry said, you people.
I'm the granddaughter of a World War II vet.
Following further discussions with Don Cherry, it has been decided it is the right time for him to immediately step down.
So I think I should have used the word everybody instead of you people.
See you later.
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady.
What we need to do now is honour the will of the people and get Brexit done.
Today, police are trying to understand his murder, a daytime stabbing outside his school in front of his mother.
My life fell apart.
This entire incident is disturbing.
It was over in a matter of minutes. Jaskarat Singh Sidhu stood up in court and said 5 words. I plead guilty, Your Honor.
To hear him use his own words to plead guilty, it's a powerful, powerful second for sure.
One side.
47 people were on White Island when it erupted. Small boats rushed over to help the survivors.
Helicopter pilots rushed back to save dozens of people.
In their immediate efforts to get people off the island, those pilots made an incredibly brave decision.
I feel like Paris is crying now, not just me.
Heard the big sound, the gun.
I can tell you now, this is and will be one of New Zealand's darkest days. Our gun laws will change. Every semi-automatic weapon used in the terrorist attack on Friday will be banned in this country.
Good morning. Let's have a look outside.
It is the world's most important ecosystem, home to roughly 3 million species of plants and animals. And now the site of 165,000 fires.
This is not just a forest burning, this is almost a cemetery.
The Amazon is turning to ashes.
Everyone pray for us, please. Please pray for us.
It's almost like the island has been completely reclaimed by the ocean.
Under an unrelenting sun, 43 degrees Celsius.
Heat waves will become more intense. It is absolutely consistent with what we expect from climate change.
So we've been talking a lot about rising water. We need to also make sure we don't ignore the fact about rising stress and tension.
It's shocking to see that. I've never seen anything like it before.
In the Beauce region south of Quebec City, hundreds of homes were already flooded.
You're so discouraged. You're discouraged.
The sirens call of Venice taking on a whole new meaning as floodwaters reach their highest level in 50 years.
Insane the amount of water.
Mozambique has declared its first ever national state of emergency.
This is ridiculous. It look like Venice out here. Everybody need a boat or something. This is like sad.
You all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money. The world is waking up, and change is coming, whether you like it or not. Thank you.
But there's a version on the internet by a girl called Emma Stevens. It's a beautiful version.
Allah sevdiğin
Just one day after surgery, and this.
See that smile on his face.
It turned my attention, and all of a sudden I looked over, and I cannot believe this.
How many times do you practice a day?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
D stands for our dignity, our name will never change.
On the arrival of a baby boy!
This little thing is absolutely to die for, so I'm just over the moon.
I'm so grateful to my family.
O found herself on the cover of Time when the magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people of 2019.
The incredible Simu Liu.
Kawhi up top, looks at the clock, turns the corner for the win!
NBA Finals, you have to do this in order to realize that this is a reality.
Curry lets it fly. Canada, the NBA title is yours.
Are you ready?
It's amazing. Everybody's out. I don't believe nobody went into work today.
You deserve this in the best way possible. Make some noise for your team, the greatest in the world.
Astounding Andreescu.
She has such a great drop shot. Wow.
The fact that she's now trending has not been lost on her.
It gives me even more motivation to do better. I guess I have to start setting my goals a bit higher.
The outstanding athlete of the year in Canada, the first tennis player that has won this award. Bianca, congratulations. Spectacular.
After the break, their influence was felt in politics, in the arts, and everyday life. We look back at the lives lost in 2019.
To me, the joke was never the hit.
I didn't mean go.
I was looking for the absurdity in the whole thing.
If you want to be a success in anything, just stick to it.
Yeah, let's do lunch.
Excuse me, I'm not at my best. For a week, I've been drunk since I so-called vacation will soon.
I'm living through war in peacetime. I'm dying to get through to you.
I've been in the wrong place, but it must have been the right time.
I've got 2 tickets to paradise. Won't you pack your bags and leave tonight?
If you end up at the end of life going, boy, I wish I'd have done it differently, I think that's silly. I think you just got to do whatever is here at the time.
Books are knowledge. Books are reflection. Books change minds. Art works.
I have the talent to tell stories, regardless of whether they're people of color with it or not. I try to make movies that are cool, like a Marvin Gaye record.
Like tears in rain.
Well, we thought that it would be successful. But nobody realized how successful it would be.
I walk through the woods. You've been almost everywhere. That's true, I have.
I don't overdo all, the work aspect of music. When I do play, it maybe comes out sounding a little more like a special performance. I would like to think that.
Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be.
All my life, been grinding all my life. Sacrifice.
Candles and flowers mark the spot where Nipsey Hussle lost his life.
He cared about us. You don't understand what he meant to us.
It's important to protect our culture, protect our language. It's important to put it in our music.
They have 10,000 men on the road, and you get the impression of a solid line.
It's such a privilege to be able to spend one's life watching the world unfold.
It became sort of flat for me, the photography. I think films gave me, at least, you combine sound, with the image. It forced me to think harder.
The night was mighty dark, so you could hardly see, 'cause the moon refused to shine. There's a couple sitting beneath the willow tree for love.
I speak for the hundreds of thousands of people whose livelihood depends on Chrysler remaining in business. It's that simple.
I feel very much that the mentally deficient are the people who have no voice in our land.
We've all in our culture talked about the fact that death is going to happen, but we also avoid it when we can. And that's the gift part. I mean, we all are going to die, right? It's a matter of what we do with this life we have.
When Crystal climbed into the donation bin, she did it to help others. She'd often pull clothes out and hand them out on the street. And in the end, it killed her.
And I learned that my daughter was loving and caring, and she cared for other people. It's amazing. And she was strong, very strong girl.
For over 30 years, Avram Morrow was known as Mr. Bikeman.
He would donate dozens of new bicycles annually to kids at Sun Youth. Murrow would do it anonymously.
He only stood 5'3", but David Hart is being remembered as a tower of strength. As a radio signaler, Hart coolly manned his post as shells rained down. He sent retreat orders to 2 Canadian units, saving many lives.
I love my country, and I love the guys that went in with us.
As far as the year in politics goes, 2019 has been full. In Northwest Territories, a vote that sent a record number of women to the legislature. Hannah Thibodeau spoke to Premier Caroline Cochrane, right now Canada's only female premier.
At the end of a long line of dark suits and ties sits the lone woman.
Really great to see a strong woman at a premier's table.
Caroline Cochrane became the premier of the Northwest Territories in October.
I think it's been probably a very long time before they've had an Indigenous woman at the table. So it was important, like I said, to educate when topics came up about Indigenous people. I was there to have a voice and to put forward my opinions on topics that were perhaps maybe controversial.
Cochrane is Métis and a social worker for 20 years. She says that experience taught her how to approach situations like this.
I was kind of, excuse my language, a burn the bra, hold the picket sign, march down, rah, rah, rah. And then I learned very quickly that all that did was build up walls.
Just 6 years ago, the picture was much different. Nearly half were women, until last April when Alberta Premier Rachel Notley was turfed, leaving Canada with no female premiers.
Miss Kathleen Wynne.
One former premier from that group of 6 had her official portrait added to the Ontario legislature. It took over 150 years for a female to join the men on those walls.
I think it can't be balanced when there's one woman and 12 men. I think that the issues that are discussed, we know from research that the issues that are discussed at a table, a decision-making table, are different when there's a critical mass of women.
Some hope this doesn't become a lasting trend.
I really think it came out of a shift in politics at the provincial level in contradiction to a progressive federal government. But, history doesn't evolve in a straightforward way.
Even with more women participating, so far, no legislative assembly has ever achieved gender parity between women and men. And no female premier has ever been re-elected to form government in Canadian history. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
Next on The National, remember the Y2K fear? How some people spent this night 2 decades ago. In our moment. We'll be right back. 20 years ago tonight, the whole world was on edge over Y2K, a software glitch that many feared would wreak havoc. CBC Saskatchewan's Ted Deller was one of the key people on the Y2K watch. Stationed at a remote transmitter site in Watrous, Deller's biggest New Year's Eve moment is our moment.
I'm not sure exactly how I drew the short straw, but I was probably just the youngest announcer that we had at the time. The transmitter for CBC in Saskatchewan is located in Watrous. In case something went wrong with the telephone system or the power grid in the province, we would need to be there ourselves. And so that's what I was for. I think we had some frozen meals and we brought a microwave because we knew we'd have electricity. We have a very large generator there, a diesel engine that would spark up and power up the place if we needed to. It turns out that it was a fun sort of engagement to have for that evening, even though I wasn't able to toast with everybody else back home. But we did have a lot of fun. As midnight came and went, the lights stayed on and we figured everything was okay.
He was ready, though, if he had to go live to Saskatchewan and parts of Manitoba. He was there. Fortunately, it was a quiet, peaceful night. Hope it is as well tonight. That's the National for December 31st. Good night.